You're listening to the Adventuring Party for the 4th week of January 2023. This week, we promised we were going to stop talking about D&D every week, and WotC continues to make that goal easier. The Adventuring Party, discussing tabletop and radio gaming the Irish way.
Welcome to the party. I'm Eoin.
I'm Savage Mick.
I'm Warlord Scar.
And I'm Dave.
And our friends at WotC have finally unveiled their true colours. And my venom sacs have swollen over the last couple of weeks as I've been denied my opportunity to vent my toxic plasm all over them. So today at the Adventuring Party, it's our second round of OGL madness? Yeah, madness.
Mad debacle farce.
Brouhaha.
Is first is tragedy, second is farce? Is that it? I don't know. It's there's a lot of things you could say about the last week, folks. But one thing you can be certain of is that we're back. Our takes are slightly hotter this time, as we've not let too much water pass under the bridge. And yes, we have the formidable, the bile-soaked Hida Owen contesting for the War Master, our bellicose role in this episode. Watch out, Scar.
But are things really so bad?
Once he's decimated a village or two, he's a cuddly old warlord slash defender of the realm. Hida, it's been a week.
It has been a week, and I've followed the whole thing with a great amount of interest. I have been railing against 5th Ed since way before it was cool, and mostly most of my objections are design ones, and my concerns about the dominance of a single RPG to the ludicrous extent they are currently dominant. And I've watched with interest kind of the back and forth that's happening here. That there is a bunch... It's interesting to watch kind of the two sides form up here, because initially there's a lot of shock and broad repudiation of this overreach by WotC, and they were relying on legal muscle to squash everybody, that everyone would be afraid to stand up to them. That was what they were pulling. They've hated the OGL, the original OGL, since the previous management team of 3rd edition moved on. They have hated it. They thought it was a bad idea. And everyone they've recruited are also people who are going to think it was a bad idea to let other people have access to any of your IP, even stuff that they know they can't own. Like, here's the thing, right? The OGL was a gentleman's agreement more than it was anything else. It was saying, we won't sue you for making D&D adjacent stuff. That was what it was. And on that, a good chunk of the industry was based. I mean, if you say that D&D is 99% of the industry, and you could very credibly make that argument. If D&D is 99% of the industry, Paizo might be 0.5%, and they're the biggest competitor. But even that is kind of too much for WotC. Or is it? And that was kind of what I spent some time thinking about. I'm not sure how much this whole plan... They were going to take a shot at Paizo, because you always take a shot at your competitors when you can. But what's WotC's motivation here? And I thought about it, and I think WotC have committed to raising profits 15% a year up until 2023, I believe. I believe that was the commitment to their thing. They were going to get their profits up a total of 50%. And that broke down to about a 15% rise a year. And I don't know if they can keep squeezing more people into the RPG hobby. I think we may have hit our cap or close to our cap unless something dramatic happens. Like maybe the movie spurs a whole new influx. But I don't think it will. I think they've they figured they're at or near the cap. And at this point it's time to start consolidating people and really starting squeezing money out of them.
Squeezing seems to be the word, judging by leaks.
And this is them getting ready to really start extracting value from their customers. And I mean, I will call them customers. I'm sure WotC internally, probably inside the Constitution, calls them something else.
Keep milking the boys.
Yeah, I mean, they're looking at people going, these people have money and that money should be ours. What can we do to get it out of them? Now, the thing about the RPG industry is it's often populated by people who do this out of mad, misguided passion, producing something which economically is not worth it. Like most RPGs copping out to 2,000 people, and you've written a 500-page textbook for that on which you're going to earn a very small amount of money for the most part. These are passion projects by lunatics. That's what it comes down to. And there are some companies making money. There are a few companies that make a significant amount of money. And then there's WotC, which again might be 99% of the industry. And it's been interesting watching the battle lines kind of fall. Because initially everyone was like, oh my God, this is outrageous. And then some people had to think about it to try and figure out which side of the loaf they were there, or which side of the slice of bread their butter was on. And have kind of gone, well, maybe we're rushing to criticize WotC because they've realized they make a lot of money out of what WotC does, or at least they make a lot of money at the moment out of WotC does, out of D&D's dominance. So I was thinking about who wants this state of affairs to continue and who wants there to be change. Violent change, perhaps, but certainly change in the industry. And the people I see as wanting this way to be are, you've got WotC themselves who want all your money. You've got the people who you might cause truly dedicated WotC fans or D&D fans, true believers. Other people might call them simps. People might call them pay pigs. Delete is applicable, whichever way you want to look at it. And they are the true blue. I saw people posting that we need to stop letting these people attack D&D and break up this great hobby. And I'm like, wow, that's an incredible viewpoint. How does that boot taste? How good must that boot taste?
If you've been born into it.
When you have threads about a certain type of fan who's argue that Hasbro should absolutely monetize D&D far harder, it's an interesting perspective. I won't lie.
We're in an age where there's a legion of people in Russia saying that Putin needs to go in harder into Ukraine, and I can't help but draw a certain analogy there.
Yeah, like you've got people, some people just love the taste of boot. I don't know what to tell you. Then there's the other people who have a logical reason for wanting the state of affairs to continue where D&D is really the only RPG, and that's the pro DMs. Now, pro DMs are a very new phenomena. Like this is a last 5 years thing. Like it did not exist in any significant numbers beyond that. I remember one of the larger RPG forums on the planet, RPG.net, once having a thread where someone explained how they were a pro DM and what you needed to do to be a good pro DM, and it became a byline and mockery.
That never happened. That's not a thing.
He explained that the most important thing that a pro DM should do is wear a mask to promote a sense of mystery.
It's Gary Gygax. He's doing it. He's back.
Yeah, like this. There is some historical precedent for that. It's not It's not a crazy idea. It's
a mad idea.
But it didn't really exist as a thing prior to about 5 years ago. There wasn't a market, and most of the people coming in would just learn to play the RPG themselves and run for their own friends, their own friend group. But the pro DM has a different approach. The pro dungeon master, if they're trying to make a decent amount of money off it, or a decent living, has, let's say, 14 slots in a week that they could potentially run the game in. All right, and they're going to have to, in the best traditions of the hustle gig economy, working on your own sort of thing, they're going to take the hours they get. And so that's probably going to mean they're probably running 4 times in the weekends, and then they're doing primarily afternoon slots. But if you were very on the ball, you could maybe do an afternoon slot or an evening slot in Europe from the US, and then do an evening slot in the US. And you could probably, if you're very good, maybe squeeze out 10 or 12 sessions in a week, because you need downtime. You're not on all the time. And those people are going to want everybody playing D&D. Not because D&D is maybe the easiest to run. But if you're trying to draw together 5 people, not like you're not trying to put together 5 people, let's align all our schedules sort of thing. No, they've got slots and they're looking to fill those slots with people. And if all those 5 people are from different areas, that doesn't matter. You're playing online. So you want 5 people to come in and play at the same time. You just want to fill it. And if for that to happen, you don't want to be going, okay, I've got 2 for Cthulhu on a Saturday. I've got 1 for L5R. And I've got 1 for D&D, and I've got 1 for Thirsty Sword Lesbians or something. Well, that's no use. I need 5 for D&D. I need 5 for 1 game. To recruit like that, it's like the old maths puzzle of if you go into a room with 30 people, how many people have the same birthday? Right? If everyone has got a different RPG preference, it's much harder to put together that critical mass to get a table going so you can then charge every one of them, because you want as many people as possible on that table because you're going to charge per person.
I suppose the question is like how visible and how influential is the pro GM movement, because if it's it doesn't, well, it seems to have expanded beyond the handful that it was, but like
it's not very big, but they're very loud. Because they do conduct all their business on social media. Because they're trying to recruit people. So because I've been watching I was wondering, who's making this argument and why are they making the argument that we should be a lot easier in D&D? They're just trying their best, They're just heckin' valid pupperinos trying to do their best, I'm like, who's making that argument? Is it someone of enormous charity of spirit? Or is it somebody who's got a bit of money in the game? And not negative. I mean, I don't think they're bad people for wanting there just to be one RPG. They're just trying to maximize.
It's an understandable motivation. The obvious evolution of those is, of course, the celebrity GM. All the same things apply, and now it's extended to, does my audience understand what we're doing? If you're watching a game of football, do you understand the rules of football? If you're watching a game of D&D, do you get the framework we're playing in? So it's possibly even more important to them that the extent, the reach of D&D is as wide as possible.
I know when some of the celebrity streamers, when they switch off D&D, they lose an appreciable amount of audience. Even the bigger boys. So that has to play into their minds that it's dangerous to switch away.
Which makes sense that they remain quite rules light. It's the less of it that imposes itself between you and your audience, the better. We're just role-playing here, guys. System? What system? Okay, so Dave, do you want to take us through the timeline for the last 7 days? We're recording this, folks, on the 21st. It's another bright and thankfully frost-free morning here in good old Dublin town and elsewhere. And yeah, we recorded a week ago, catching up on an awful lot of drama. But a week's a long time in gaming, as it turns out. So, Dave, what's been going on since the 14th?
Well, the general controversy and hubbub it did seem to be dying down a little bit, but there's been a week of rumor, some more source than others, but there was the accusation that WotC's survey, which they rolled out for OGL 1.2 to get feedback was, well, there was argument that this is to take criticism off social media, that it'll go into all this feedback will never be looked at, and you had WotC employees past and present who said no, we absolutely do look at feedback. I looked at 500,000 bits of information for Unearthed Arcana, and we're able to source that, and the argument remains how much. I suppose the argument doesn't seem now so much about how much WotC will whether WotC will do feedback or not, whether that feedback will have any appreciable effect on outcomes.
Yeah, as you said, we've seen a lot of rumor and disinformation, and it's kind of that point in the conspiracy cycle where we've had a reaction from the villain of the piece, if you like, which is how a lot of all this stuff gets framed now. People choose sides. Anything coming from one camp has to be wrong. Anything coming from another camp is absolutely, yes, that's the way we're going now. It's been, for me at least, quite a depressing week to watch as this stuff, old rumors and old hoaxes even got resurfaced and got a lot of airtime. I'm sure you've all seen what looked like PowerPoint presentations, very fuzzy ones, of proposals for $30 a month subscriptions, AI GMs, all sorts of other nonsense that were passed around as further proof that the evil overlords of WotC were at it again, and very quickly debunked because they'd already, some of them spurious on their face. AI, chat AI, and things like that are nowhere near ready to DM a game.
But they are in the news recently, so they are good for catching people's attention.
Yeah. Everyone pays attention when you mention AI. But the most egregious one was definitely the rumor that they'd start charging. They'd turn D&D into an online service, game as a service, where you'd pay some fixed amount per month, Netflix style, get access to everything. But it was going to be quite, eye-watering amount for a lot of people. If you've only ever paid kind of a cup of coffee a month for D&D beyond services, the idea of that bumping up to twice Netflix is, it's quite a lot. And but it was a rumor. I think there is an argument for game as service, but how that's monetized is somebody else's problem.
I 100% believe they would like to charge you, more money for the service. They would like there to be more content gated behind that subscription. I 100% believe that. I don't know if 30 is realistic initially. 30 could be the down the road plan. But, because it's always... Actually, I was thinking a much higher than 30 a month would be the game plan at the end of it. That was an aspirational one, where you've got a 300 a month sub, which does a lot of fancy stuff.
For what?
For the whales. Because
for what? What could they conceivably offer that's worth?
That is what they would try and figure out.
Yeah, that's I think there's a natural cap. As you were saying, there's only so many. I do think the movie will drag an awful lot of other people in. If there isn't a starter set with Chris Pine on the front come April or whatever, I'd be shocked. I'd be absolutely shocked. It's like when you go to the bookstore and there's a movie out and that book you read 4 years ago has now a major motion picture on the sticker on the front of it.
They got to replace the Rick and Morty box sets with something, right?
Yikes! Yeah, I mean, a better tie-in by any metric. And then, of course, the last thing to drop this week was not the last thing, but the last official thing we can talk about is that the 1.2. So we saw the 1.2 draft with the we've even used a different color ink virtual tabletop policy strapped on there. And now they're soliciting feedback through an online survey that, if they don't pay attention to feedback, then this is just a black hole in which to drop outrage. And if they do pay attention, then they're going to have an awful lot of work. Has anyone looked at that survey?
I've seen parts of it, people pulling out kind of relevant extracts from it. And I think what's interesting about the survey is... No, I've seen parts of it.
Anyone else? Anyone else look at it?
Doesn't need a D&D Beyond subscription, the thing I don't have?
No, it doesn't. Just go and click on a link. You'll be asked to fill in a survey. So the survey takes a format of, would you like to give us feedback? And then it asks about 20 questions that say, that amount to basically, let me just, I won't click through to it again. Where is it? The survey says, it's the same question over and over about multiple different aspects of the 1.2 OGL document. And it's basically, how well do you understand it, rated 1 to 5, from don't understand to understand very well, and how satisfied are you with X? So how well do you understand the virtual tabletops policy, and how satisfied are you with the virtual tabletops policy? And then there's a big text field. Give us any other feedback you'd like to include for the virtual tabletop policy. And that happens 19 times throughout the document, and that's basically it. It asks you to look at each clause, rate your understanding, rate your satisfaction. There's a question or two about, are you more or less satisfied with D&D having read this document? And then it goes, thank you for your time, and closes up. Now, I'm not a survey writer. I don't know if that's a good survey or not. It probably didn't take them a lot of time to put together. There's no nuanced questions there, but there are great big blank fields into which you can pour any amount of feedback. So,
and I'm sure it'll get read. I'm absolutely sure all those blank forms will get read.
I think it'll all be thrown into some of the data analysis tools that I've seen described by people, where they look for key terms and stuff like that. There's no reason not to.
Do they actually have the suite of those in WotC is the question? Like, do they actually have like OCR bots to read in text and analyze it?
It doesn't need OCR. It's there in digital form. You're submitting it online. Why would no one's printing it out in a fax machine and feeding it to the Surveytron 5000? It's like the data is there for them to use. Whether they use it or not has become an open question. Hey, do they have data people to analyze it? I don't know. We'd have to look at the hiring and firing at a level where I'm not sure anyone has access to that sort of information just yet.
No one is going to admit to being D&D analytics guy at the moment.
Yeah, they are soliciting responses from the community in the form of a survey, which is very open-ended. I'd say it's a very flat kind of. Did you read this clause? Do you understand this clause? How satisfied are you with this clause? Any other feedback, please? So if you've got an essay to write, they've given you a place to write it into. Whether they read it or not, or just feed it to the machine and see what it spits out in terms of phrase recognition is, which I imagine is a lot of data analysis. I mean, who's going to go through all of it by hand? You're not looking for the source of cholera. Yeah, so that's there. It is a place where people can go and give feedback. Now, of course, the response to being asked your opinion online is, no, I won't give you my opinion. I'll continue to post to Reddit and Twitter, which is, it is worth bearing in mind that simply filling in the survey and then shutting the door and not thinking about it is probably not the best move. There is a continued need for discussion. Otherwise, what would we have to talk about?
Look, Eddie, your thing with, hey, look, I filled out the survey. My job is done here. You can take that as a consumer, but if you're looking to kind of resist these guys, that's probably not the way it's going to go. What I found interesting was I thought it was sort of the revised one they put out, and the thing about it is that there's nothing legally binding them to any of this stuff. They've said they have hidden in their new agreement or the new OGL that they can withdraw it whenever they want. They've said that it's the clauses in it are irrevocable, but not the licenses are irrevocable. They've done some interesting kind of little rhetorical sleight of hand on it, where they can't pull the rug out from under you on this. And what I thought was interesting is they've taken this one takes aim at VTTs.
Oh, big time!
And I was thinking about this, and you were mentioning that the current CEO of WotC was responsible for Mixer. And I think it will loom large in her mind that Mixer tried to take on an established site with a lot of money backing Mixer, but Twitch was just too strong, and Mixer completely flopped after spending an awful lot of money. And I think that would resonate in her mind that maybe, hold on, us rolling out a VTT with strong competitors, and probably competitors who are technically ahead of us, may not be great. So anything we can do to defang them or, crimp them is a good idea. So I would say that that is definitely something that was rattling around in their head. That they were looking at, how do we basically restrict or slow down or hurt the competitors who are rapidly establishing themselves. Like Foundry is sort of the new person on the new guy hanging around, in that it started at the start of the pandemic and has gone through a lot of revisions over the pandemic, has gotten a lot better over the course of the last 3-4 years. So coming on with a brand new, probably little bit dodgy VTT and going, right, well, this is the one you guys are going to pay real money for and pay real D&D on, may be an issue that they don't want to handle.
Yeah. It's going to have all the bugs of a computer game, plus all the bugs of a role-playing system, wrapped up into one.
Speaking of feedback, though, I do find it interesting that like actual named media who are paying attention the last week or so to WotC and Hasbro. You have the likes of the investment site, the Motley Fool, trying to put up a take. The Washington Post has an explainer on the OGL that actually does refer to a potential ban on competitor virtual tabletops. It's probably not the kind of press that Hasbro wants to see, to be honest.
Yeah, it's been all over the place, that is the kind of things that the investors might actually look at, even if they don't care about any technical details or what a D20 is.
They would be super happy if this was just a nerd fight. They don't want anyone else looking at this.
I think it's the cat is somewhat out of the bag.
No one running a monopoly particularly wants anyone external taking a close look at all.
And I imagine that they'd like this to simmer down before the movie hits.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't want anything hurting the box office.
So the 1.2 license, which I've kind of gone over with as keen an eye as any layman, it's certainly, compared to the first thing we saw, the unconfirmed 1.1 draft, it's a much clearer legal document with all the sort of the phrasing and formatting you'd expect. It looks like something you could legitimately sign and that would stand up. It has zero chummy comments about how we're all friends in this together. It is a pretty straightforward document. The clauses, the loopholes, the trapdoors that are in it remain to be entirely explained to me. But yeah, the thing it appended to it after about 5 pages is that virtual tabletop policy, which it's an interestingly written and very clearly ring-fenced piece of the document, because it's written as a series of questions and answers. I'm not sure it actually states a policy, as opposed to sort of refers to one that you can now imagine in your head, much like a DM describing the room you stepped into. But it's the place where I think the most overreach continues to occur, as you were saying, if they want to pull a mixer without the ignominious end, which Cynthia Williams was responsible for. She was head of that. She was certainly involved in that project as it flourished and then died. But this VTT policy game of questions and answers is like it's you're arriving late to the party and you've decided that you're going to take over DJing when the music's already set. The notion that they will be able to limit the ability of competitors to use things like animations, and that could extend to like lighting, all sorts of other things. Like that's kind of nuts. And how they imagine they can enforce any of that, like the concept of animating stuff on a digital platform, is like I'm pretty sure the Clippy emoji in Word would fall foul of this policy. Yeah, it's kind of nuts. They clearly feel like virtual tabletops should still be their thing, and it's the very clear indication that that's where the business is going. A lot of the communication to the wider public has been through mouthpieces that are branded D&D Beyond, not WotC or D&D. D&D Beyond, which they paid 140 odd million for, is the product at this point, as far as I'm concerned. Though plenty of people will tell you the book sales are still important, but like the horses were important until they weren't, and then the motor car took over. That's the sea change that WotC are kind of planning, that everybody will be playing digitally, that they probably won't be buying books but will be subscribed to an all-you-can-eat service. But the keystone to all of that is going to be something like the virtual tabletop that they've announced, sort of shown alpha footage of. And this policy that they have here is designed to sweep away, it's just basically clean sweep the already flourishing field so that they can plant the monocrop and everybody will have to eat from it. It's the thing I'd imagine will result in this 1.2 version being rejected out of hand again, because it's far too much sort of, that's, what's yours is mine once again. So if you thought everything else about the document was fine, and I think there's plenty of people who could point to other trapdoors in it, this thing, if you're Foundry, if you're Roll20, if you're whoever, is a big no-no.
It is fine if you're a like a PDF producer or you're making a rulebook, but for me, so there's the old saying, like, you know, if someone tells you who they are, believe them. And WotC showed their colours, and for all this kind of contrite, we did a goofy, you know, I wouldn't buy it. It is much like you seeing someone in the middle of the street murdering somebody and drinking their blood, and then turning into a shower bath. You go, oh my god, that person's a vampire. And you run away to your house, and you start telling on your friends. So there's a knock at the door. The guys there go, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Could I come in by any chance? I was like, he sounds really reasonable. Maybe we should let him in.
Yeah, one of the things about the 1.2 draft is that it is actually a draft. The 1.1 leak is not a draft, no matter what the excuse was after the fact. It was sent out to people, like companies.
But there's sort of this is sort of where I go back to like some of the Twitter scuttlebutt. Is I saw a thread from RPG historian Shannon Appelklein, where he pointed out that this is sort of a sort of pattern that WotC's been engaging in since 2000, when the new management took over, and that they've started trying very hard to weasel out of every contract that's on them while putting contracts on other people. The idea is like they absolutely do not want to have any legal obligations. They did this with the Dragonlance writers, who basically had a book ready to go and then got sued by WotC for asking why their book hadn't been printed. And then there was the Gale Force 9 incident and all the messy stuff there, and a whole bunch of behind the scenes shenanigans there. And this just seems like more of the same, where like the whole thing is framed as you have obligations to us, but we have no obligations to you. That's the way that's framed is, I think, very telling. And and this is sort of where I'm sort of in two minds, because like the evidence for me was very compelling up until like you one of the links that you linked to Stave were whether they're actually trying to set up so that Hasbro is incredibly sellable. Not Hasbro, WotC, I mean. The WotC has no legal obligations and thus can be sold on the turn of a dime. Or if they're trying to set up this, as I say, this digital and movie-based franchise that is basically trying to wage off the people who do want to sell. Because there's the whole behind-the-scenes investor thing where there's a small minority of the shareholders at Hasbro say that WotC should be split off into its own thing, and Hasbro are basically trying to keep everything together in house. And like, which of these realities too? Which like these patterns, these contracts, are they trying to make WotC easier to sell, or are they trying to make WotC more closely tied to Hasbro's revenue stream? Or in particularly harebrained scheme, are they trying to simultaneously do both so that they have maximum flexibility?
All of those are possible.
I think corporate overreach could mean they could decide we can do both at the same time. We can make ourselves really attractive to sell and also a keystone power. I think they may be serving two masters in that they want to get their profits up this much. Maybe it's 15%, maybe it's a little more now because Magic is having a minor implosion. So it might be like, well, D&D, it's time for you to step up. And they're looking to how do we extract more money from our customers.
Are we referring to the 30th anniversary celebrations where perhaps the teeth got squeezed a bit too hard?
They've severely damaged Magic. If you look at the singles sale prices, which are in some ways kind of a leading indicator of how Magic's getting on, that reserve list cards are still doing well and everything else is going way down. And that's an indicator that is interest in the game is dropping. And that means you burnt people out. You've basically gone, oh, there's this many secret layers. And them coming out and they say, well, guys, you're not meant to buy all of them. And I'm like, that's not how CCG players think. They're going to try and buy all of them. And it's basically burnt a massive hole in their finances, and they just go, you know what, sod this, I'm out. And they've done that, and then you've got to replace that money, right?
So, what other cows do we have in the shed? Pull them out. Let's milk them. Scar, to go back to, as you were talking about the sort of the long history of WotC / TSR reneging or wriggling out of contracts or being very poor people to be in a contract with. It should be noted, of course, that a lot of those are incidents spread across the history of the companies. But it's not always the same people doing it, but it does, as you sort of indicate, point to a cultural mindset.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm reminded of the old term when people were complaining why BioWare had gone crap after EA bought them. There's a sort of term called tone at the top. WotC might be originally built by a whole bunch of passionate fans and potential con men, but they've been bought by Hasbro. They're owned by one of the biggest toy companies in the world, who are definitely up in that entertainment media billionaire mindset, and that does trickle down, and that's how you get people like the Microsoft employees coming in to make things, and like self-selection for people who come from WotC up into Hasbro. So that's just sort of a phenomenon, this level of things. It's like there's only so much how what's the Crawford guy name again?
Jeremy Crawford.
Jeremy, god damn it! I there's a guy called Jackson Crawford on YouTube. He's great. And he's the only Crawford I can remember. But yes, Jeremy. There's only
Cindy
so much.
Crawford? No, too young.
Probably too young.
Cindy Crawford. Okay, go look her up. Anyway.
But there's only so much the passion of the design team can improve the game, improve D&D, improve WotC. Like, whenever you think about Jeremy Crawford or Mark Rosewater or any of those people, there's only so much direction they can put on the trajectory of the company. Ultimately, it's going to come down to people like Cynthia Williams and Chris Cox, I believe, was the guy who went from WotC to lead Hasbro. They're the ones who are going to make the decision. It's the executive culture that they're soaking in that's going to define, the direction of WotC at the end of the day. Like, there's no amount of game design that will stop the profiteering marketing pushes. Is a simple way I'm going with this.
Right. So there's and to sum of that in terms of the bottom line, the last thing that kind of happened during the week was the growing movement of people cancelling their paid subscriptions that was this week, wasn't it, to D&D Beyond? That happened in the last week.
Yeah, it started early in the week.
Yeah. Now, for the listeners, I've heard a lot of people with very different takes on this. It should be pointed out that you can have an account on D&D Beyond and access a lot of material you've bought in the marketplace, and material that has been shared with you through campaigns, and that can be a free account. So you can then step up for some additional benefits like unlimited characters on the platform. I think you're limited to 6 at the moment.
Yeah, it's 6.
If you pay the player subscription, which is a few dollars a month, $5.99, something like that, you've got that subscription, which again, access to all the books you've bought, access to more characters, you can join more campaigns, etc. And then there's the Games Master tier, which is about $60 a year. No, I've forgotten what the pricing is, but it's in that ballpark. And that is, you can share content that you have, etc., etc., etc. So there are paid subscriptions, and there's a free account. And even if you cancel your subscription, you'll still have access to campaigns, campaign books, stuff that's been shared with you, and stuff you've bought in the marketplace yourself. But a lot of people, allegedly, there's reports of anywhere up to 5 figures, lots of people went and cancelled their paid portion. Both GMs and players went and cancelled their paid portion of their subscription to D&D Beyond this week. And it apparently sent a message.
Yeah, that's free money. That's free money for WotC, and they don't like the free money being messed with. I had, when I was thinking about why why some of the terms are on there, why some of the terms are still on there. I think one of their major concerns is they want to do a 6th edition that's different enough to be difficult to play using the previous rules. And they're worried that somebody will pull a Pathfinder on them, release a retro clone using the OGL, and then have some of their lunch. And they don't want that to happen again. So a lot of this stuff, but they're like, okay, whatever, you can publish old stuff again. Fine. Not super happy, but fine. But they definitely don't want someone going, here's 5.5 to compete with our 6th ed.
There's also the fact that they seem quite invested in virtual tabletop being the future, which is understandable. And like Foundry came out with a statement there yesterday, basically breaking down their response to the OGL 1.2 draft, and they're not fans.
Well, it's a direct attack on their business model, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's a pretty good breakdown of what the problems with that part of the document are. And one of the things that points out, it's a policy, not part of the legal document. It's very open to manipulation, change over time. Not to mention, it starts out from a place of where we don't want competition, no matter how much we say we love VTTs. I think you're continuing to show a certain myopic kind of viewpoint as to what the market is, what the audience is looking for, and what its relationship with its competitors is and could be. The 1.2, I suspect, is not going to have an easy time, but.
Well, the thing is, I suspect there's going to be, a contingent of people who think that, WotC's on the back foot. If we just do the survey hard enough, we can roll an Nat 20 and just overthrow their wicked plans and mold D&D to our thing. So I'd imagine there's going to be a sort of delusional cult of people who think that they can legalise WotC into making the D&D they want, and they'll be trapped in the cycle of being strung along by the whole process.
Like, WotC has a lot of weasel stuff in there that they can pull. Like, they can hit you for if you're producing, hateful content or, stuff that is...
as adjudicated by them and them alone.
And you can always... This is very anti-WotC. That's pretty hateful. That's pretty hate spreading. Let's knock this on the head.
Well, we object to your racist monkeys, but our racist monkeys are fine.
Yeah, their racist monkeys were vetted by the best racist monkey handlers.
Honestly, that entire clause just seems as cover for we can use this to blow up in a competitor we don't like.
Yeah, like if they hadn't started with the 1.1 stuff, we might think that that's a reasonable clause, but now that we're already had a gun pointed at our heads one time, it's harder to believe them. They've lost the benefit of the doubt is the real problem here.
You see, once you take they published this therapist class. However, if you insert a space here between THE,
don't do it.
And the
don't
rest.
do it.
Like that's the kind of stuff
right.
you can pull. You could be like, this is hidden content. This is dog whistling stuff. Like you can pull.
They don't even need to go that detailed. They can just unless I'm reading it wrong, they can just claim that this is hateful, not elaborate anymore, and pull.
Exactly. So you can't trust them. They tried. They massively overreached. I think Monty Cook described it as someone pulls a gun on you and tries to shoot you. Their gun jams. They apologize profusely and say that was a misunderstanding. Don't worry, it'll never happen again. While trying to clear the jam of the gun. Like, do you trust them?
So that's good.
It's
good.
Don't, because they're not trustworthy. They're trying to make they're trying to make a massive amount of money and control a lot of the hobby and maintain their massive market dominance. Because that's what the other side of this look at it. They see a chance to chip off a bunch of D&D players. And if the hobby can chip off a big enough chunk of them and distribute them out to other games, get a bunch of new fans, that's a massive win for them. So that's what their motivation is for. We can chip away at this a bit, this monolith,
that's also very understandable. By the way, there's loads of sales going on about with your OGL themed and non-OGL themed. Sorry.
Yeah, I've picked a lot of core books up for $1 this week.
I was actually wondering about one thing. I was wondering how much of 6th edition or 1D&D or whatever you want to call it is going to be physical.
Very little. It would be my guess. I think they'll do the core books and then they'll funnel people with increasing sort of errata updates and they'll dangle some good stuff as well. But digital first is absolutely the way they want to go here. It's so much easier than printing stuff.
I think my theory was that they'll have the physical books, and each class will have 2 perfectly functional subclasses to run with. But if you register your PHB on D&D Beyond and take the first tier sub, you get access to the cool subclass.
Yep, very plausible.
But you can, like, it's this thing where what's interesting for me is you might have a whole D&D RPG generation which only exists digitally and only exists as long as WotC wants it to exist. So then when they want to migrate everyone onto 7th edition, they just pull the plug and it's no longer there. And this is why it's a 1D&D. It's not a 6th edition. There's no longer a 6th edition. There's just 1D&D, and we'll update it when we can by the content patch. Like, it's a whole... Instead of being able to go, I can pull down my old D&D books, you can't pull down your old D&D books anymore. They don't exist anymore. It's a bit like this rolling content mill where we just move you on to the new stuff. And there's enough content there to run your game, but there's not really. So you really want to buy some extra content. So you're moving people onto a content churn model, like your seasonal content, like your games as a service, where you just have to keep buying the new stuff as it comes out, or there's not really enough money left to play your game, or enough content left to play your gamer. And that's, I think, what they're trying to get to.
In fairness, that's splat books. That's been a business model forever. It's just a more convenient way of doing splat books. Because once the new splat book came out, you were like, I'm never looking at the old stuff again. I'm playing this stuff. The audience have demanded that forever.
But if I want to, I can go back and I can play 3rd edition D&D. Or I can go back and I can play 3.5 edition D&D. With this one, I won't be able to.
No, that's true.
And it's a bit like I can't play Destiny 2 anymore. I can play Destiny 2, The Witch
Current
Queen.
season. Yeah.
I can play Beyond Light still, but I can't go back and play the first. I can't go back and go, I'm going to play the Red War. I mean, if you want to do that, you'd have to build a private server. You'd have to get all the old game files together. It's a tremendous amount of work. Like, it's this whole thing of you're moving everybody on and you're kind of forcing them to move on. And I don't think it's ever happened in the RPG scene before. We've never had a forced update. We've never had the game police able to come along and say, you're no longer allowed to play this.
So the reason I think it's absolutely probably an objective. Absolutely probably. There you go. However, it misses a vital. There's a bit of a blind spot here. If you want to emulate the kind of Xbox Live games as a service subscription model, which is what we've seen this moving towards, the strength of that subscription isn't that you're getting access to everything Microsoft are putting out in the game space. It's that you're getting access to so many other companies' offerings on a monthly basis. You don't own any of them. You get to play them, and you probably get to play them for about as much time as you would have played it if you bought the game outright. And then it goes away after a month, and you're like, I don't care, I played the game, it's great. But a lot of games are designed so you don't really need to anyways. But it does give you a broad buffet of things to choose from. Whereas in the model we're discussing now, you'd only have access to the output of WotC. Which presumably would step up from the kind of the 5 books a year model to something much more substantial on a kind of a monthly basis. But it's only that flavor coming from that company. And I don't think that's actually enough to really sustain the interest in gaming that D&D has opened the door to, but as you know, how many people reskin D&D to be this, that, the other? And really what they want to do is go play Fate System or go play something else.
I do wonder, like, if somebody's going to start, trying to get Hasbro on antitrust legislation in the States, because they do seem to be edging towards that whole delicious monopoly like situation.
I watched wrestling be controlled by WWE for nearly 20 years, all unchallenged in the States, and no one gave a crap. It's wrestling. And I would imagine the same thing applies to gaming. No one gives a crap.
Yeah.
It's,
that's good explanation.
That's and it's only now like WWE actually has a mainstream competition, and that's a game changer. It's so much better. It's so much better when there's someone kind of competing and taking lumps at them.
Great.
I just realized there's an analogy of what this is, and I think it's going to hit home for people. I think we're seeing a situation where we would probably be okay with WotC being the Steam of RPGs, but they clearly want to be the Epic Game Store of RPGs.
Epic Game Store's full of other people's content. What are you talking about? Also, think of...
Yeah, but that WotC paid that Epic get paid vast amount of Fortnite money to get.
Yeah, I don't care. They give me free games. That's I occasionally buy something from them. Epic Game Store has improved wildly since its inception. It ain't Steam, but it ain't nothing either. But the competition in that space has forced Steam a little bit on its relationship with developers. There's no good one-to-one analogy for what I think we've discovered. There's no good one-to-one analogy for what WotC appeared to be trying to do, and we are speculating to some extent. We're kind of trying to tease it out from the tea leaves as they keep dropping nuggets of legalese and policies and questionnaires and whatever in front of us. I'm very curious to what people think the next round, the next news cycle, which I think will broaden out or lengthen out to about 2 weeks to a month. Like, where do we think we're going to be at the end of February, when we'll probably come back to this topic? Let's take it in turn. We'll go with you, Scar, and we're going to finish out the episode. Scar, what do you think?
Yeah, I do think that, like, given the mad scramble of this, I definitely think that there's going to be a push for them to, from management above, for there to be a line drawn under this in the next month or so. I think we're used to the D&D surveys being we'll do one a month and we'll sit on it for an extra 2 months, and then 3 months later there'll be a new Unearthed Arcana with like half the things we suggested in the survey and the rest completely forgotten. I don't think that's going to think here. I think if someone has panicked and started to drive this survey process, I think we may be seeing a draft 1.3 in the next 2 weeks, and they'll be trying to get to a final before, as I say, the end of February, because this is like the initial view of this was that they expected 1.1 to be in place by the end of this month, and for it to be delayed even a month would probably throw off far too many things for them. So yeah, I suspect that this is still going to be moving fast, and if it isn't resolved by February, I think this is when someone at Hasbro is really going to start poking their nose into what's going on into all this.
Yeah, isn't a quarterly report due for
Ooh,
Hasbro?
Yeah. Those are always fun.
Dave, your take a month from now?
Okay, well,
Quarterly
I suppose that
report in
segues into my take. Yeah, I mean, Hasbro are a company at the end of the day, which seems to be a reality that escapes some of the critics and fans alike. And yeah, they're looking to make money in some way, shape, or form out of this, or at least secure a market to make money. And honestly, they've burned so much goodwill that, like, their options are try to carry on as before and basically accept the loss of however many people have gone annoyed with them, or carry on with this OGL plan in some way, shape, or form and maybe claw back something. Honestly, what my guess would be they are going to come out with a new OGL of some sort. Might be the 1.2 document we've seen, might be something different again, because it's quite different to 1.1 and yeah, I'd say my guess is that their way out is through.
Just suffer it, let it ablate and keep going whatever's left. Hida, where are we going to be in a month?
I think WotC will try and play this super quiet. They want everything to calm down. They'll have whatever their financial report comes in, they'll take their lumps off that, hoping maybe find some way to obfuscate D&D Beyond numbers being down or pay D&D Beyond numbers being down. They'll then try and, you see, what they don't want any bad press throughout February going into March, because the end of March is when the movie hits, right? And if I had to lay money, there will also be a movie branded D&D starter coming out, a starter set, right? They want those two things to happen and it all to be rapturous, right? All, you know, they want a bunch of really soft press, a bunch of ticket sales, a bunch of new fans from the hobby, and they don't want anyone searching for D&D and getting D&D infuriates everyone with the OGL. They'll want to put out a bunch of soft, good news stories. They want to talk to a bunch of media they can hopefully co-opt. They'll want Critical Role to do something funky to promote the film. They'll want all the news to be nice and happy. So I would say they will try and do nothing. They will try and have nothing come out. Stuff that comes out will be leaks, or it will be announcements from the orc or something where there's basically here's what Paizo put together. Paizo putting out some word, or the whole alliance there putting out some word in February, I can see happening. I can see D&D wanting it to be quiet. It may not be quiet, but I can see D&D wanting it to be super quiet, because it's all about delivering the promise of the film. Because if the film is a huge success, we're closer to the transmedia empire D&D, and D&D is a lifestyle brand, and D&D getting some of that Marvel cachet. Marvel Comics are a train wreck, but the brand is strong, even if it's been damaged by some of the mismanagement around the too much content churn from Disney Plus. If you can make their brand a bigger deal, that's huge for them. That this stuff is to some certain extent would be a distraction from that, and they don't want a distraction. They want everyone to talk about how, the D&D has come of age as a thing. It's got a movie now, you know, for the first time ever, a D&D movie. You know, you'll see amazing amounts of revisionist history popping out about it. That's what I think will happen.
Yeah, it's certainly, as you say, if everything could just settle down until we get the movie out, I'd say Hasbro wants to be very happy. I don't anticipate the opposition or the concerned others allowing that to happen. I think the movie would be a perfect time to capitalize, rehash all of this, and get the message out. I suspect we will see. The orc thing feels like, as you said, we've got Ryan Dancy is somewhere in the mix there, and we've got these. It's going to be Paizo are creating this umbrella. A lot of people already got a sort of a bootstrap education in how copyright and things like that and open gaming license and stuff like that works. One of the things we didn't touch on is the fact that in their largesse, WotC have entered the SRD and a bunch of other content into a Creative Commons 4 license at the top of the 1.2 document. It could, however, be argued by those who've learned a little bit about what is copyrightable and what is not, that everything they've graciously put under a Creative Commons license was free for anyone to use anyways. So it forms a sort of another "we won't sue you" umbrella, but it's not as big a gift as they'd like us to think. The Orc Alliance, I suspect there's fracture down the road. I think that is a very fragile collection of a few big players who are obviously all of business interests, and then a large coalition of anybody who's ever cobbled together a supplement and put it out. I think 1,500 people signed up as sort of creators. We'll see what they can grow out of that. We haven't seen any language for it. It'd want to be incredibly robust and also somehow flexible at the same time. It'll be a challenge to make that work in the long term. Then the misinformation will continue. We've got a whole month or so where people would, on the official side, would like things to be quiet. That is a vacuum into which the 4chan people will feed any amount of nonsense. So keep your ears up, folks. I imagine we'll see a few more announcements along the lines of VTTs. That they're the biggest potential losers at the moment. Foundry put out a very good statement on what they think of the policy and the big problems they see with it. I imagine we'll see a kind of a raft of similarly aligned VTT operators emerging and saying, look, we've got a different vision for how this works. Lastly, what's last? I don't know. Go watch Cindy Crawford in the 1986 Pocari Sweat ad where she sort of dons a red Sonya
Yeah.
outfit and sword and gets busy. There, that's the thumbnail for the set, folks. Give us something to go out on.
I think that was from
Join
Japan, wasn't it?
Yeah, Pocari Sweat is, it's like Japanese Lucas said, it's apparently quite popular, and
You all looked it up. Hey.
and no one in the Western world has told them what sweat means in English, but they go
Look,
on.
further nuggets, other insights, come join our Discord. You'll find links to show notes where...
I know an awful lot of terrible Japanese trivia.
Oh, good. We're discussing the... Well, yeah, and you could prove it. Join our Discord where you will find us hashing out things for next week. I don't know if we'll come back to this. We could have to come back to this next week. I don't know. Like, WotC could simply implode. The activist investors will also be back inside the next month, especially with the earnings report coming out. That, like, there's a lot of backroom talk about how the push to hive WotC off from Hasbro may have started the ball rolling on a lot of this stuff as well. If you go back to this time last year, we'll see. But those activist investors still hold this guy with like 2.5% of the stock who really wants WotC to be a separate company. But if they're that big a part of Hasbro's earnings, that's going to be a big problem for Hasbro. We'll see how that struggle resurfaces in the next month or so. In the meantime, we've been the Adventuring Party. We cover, as it turns out, every and all aspect of tabletop role-playing, but especially the shenanigans of D&D this month. We're not really sure what we'll be coming back to you with next week. But stay tuned. And for now, this party's over.
Thanks for listening to the Adventure Party. You can find show notes and links to things we've mentioned at www.theadventuringparty.net and on our Facebook page. You can leave comments there, or talk to our Twitter account at AdventuringPTY, or you can record a voice message at www.speakpipe.com/theadventuringparty. We can also be contacted directly by email at party@theadventuringparty.net. If you'd like to be in touch with the party all the time, come join our Discord server, link in the show notes. The Adventuring Party is released under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share Alike version 3 license.